Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about CharterStone. We're going to try not to give any spoilers beyond the first game, but in case we make a mistake, here is your warning. May be spoilers ahead. So my gaming group has been playing CharterStone every game night for the last 5 game nights. We've been having a great time, and I wanted to give some explanations of how the game is played and some tips on what you should expect and how to have a better gameplay experience. Now, just a heads up, while my normal strategy videos might give you some things to think about and to give you advantage, I recommend that you share these tips. They're mild spoilers, and the intent is for everyone to get the most out of the game. They might give you a slight advantage too, though that's really just a side effect of playing the game better. Now, what is CharterStone? CharterStone is an economic city building game. A bit more precisely, it's a legacy game, which effectively just means that there are permanent consequences for future games based on previous games. In fact, in this particular legacy game, the rulebook starts out mostly blank, with the rules getting unlocked as you play the game. Don't look too close. These are stickers that you put in to fill in the spots as the game, advances. You can see we've already filled up a lot of the rules, but actually some of the rules continue to advance as you put new rules on top of old rules. So even after the rulebook is full, you're gonna keep changing the rules of every game going forward. CharterStone has some light RPG elements, including an interesting, somewhat dark fantasy storyline that you reveal over the course of the 12 games that consist of the core game. Your king has decided to expand and granted you a charter to help grow this shared village. Over 12 games, you'll unlock a storyline, new rules, new buildings, new strategies. In addition, you have a box that you permanently unlock advantages and upgrades for your part of the village, which they call a charter. All of these combine to make a unique village that has different upgrades and building placements and things than basically any other game. There's some slim possibility that somebody else has the same game as you, but for the most part, it's gonna be unique to your group that you've built, and you're gonna experience a different gameplay than our group, for example. At this point, I'm going to talk a bit about the first game. This is very mild spoilers because you have to know this stuff to play the first game, but it's kind of light spoilers. Just again, warning. When you first start the game, you have just your persona, like so. We don't have a player playing this box, so everything here is pretty much fresh, but you would name your persona. That means permanent marker, guys. Don't use a pencil. Permanent marker right there. Boom. You get some of the cards. That's a spoiler. Don't look at that one. You get a big meeple for you. You get a small meeple for your assistant. That's also a spoiler, guys. The little meeple is your assistant. Could probably have guessed that, but yeah. You get a victory point tracker that you just put on the board like so, and you get these tokens that represent your influence, and you spend the influence tokens to represent where in that particular game you've pushed your your will or your political power or whatever you want to call it. So if you donate stuff back to the king, you can put stuff over here on the quota track. And that stays there the rest of the game. If you build up some reputation, you can put a reputation over there. If you complete objectives, you can do that. You can sometimes, some buildings, you can put influence on a building and say, hey, I did this. So this represents my charter's influence. And then also sometimes you can trade influence for goods, advancements, resources, stuff like that. And in that case, your resources go back into the bank. The difference there is that some of those resources, under some special circumstances, can actually come back. Whereas the influence that represents your dominance over something, that can't come back because you would lose your advantage at that point. The board has 6 empty charters, and there's some core buildings called the commons in the center of your village. Now each player controls one of the charters, and that gives you 6 spots. Something else you get in your starter box, very first game, is you're going to get some buildings. The buildings, this isn't, one of them, but it looks somewhat like this. There's a building, there's a cost to build the building, and normally there would be like a number for a crate. And so you take the sticker off the building card when you build it, and you put it in one of your 6 spots. And so you choose what buildings you have, and just like any kind of like worker placement game, you put workers on different buildings to activate the action associated with that building. So the difference in this game is you can, at least in the beginning, put your workers anywhere. So the moment you build a building, you're giving all of your opponents a ability to use that building as well, but there is some advantages to having the building in your spot instead of their spot. So there's also numbers, like victory point values for each of the buildings that can come up in certain scenarios. It's really hard to talk about this game because everything could change game to game depending on what technologies, advancements, storyline things that your group chooses. But the core is you're gonna have 6 buildings. Your starter building is, which obviously is on the other side of the board. The other side of the board has all of our placement, and so we're in game 6, so it'd be way too many spoilers. Can't even show that to you. But I would have peeled the sticker off of that card I showed you. I would have put it here, and each faction has a resource that they have an innate ability to build. So like in this case, these guys do grain. Other people do brick and coal and stuff like that. But you would have a building, and then you can build, well, in this case, you can grow grain, I guess. That's effectively the start of the game. And as you unlock more and more advanced technologies and more buildings, you get more and more cool combinations that you can do. After you've built something, you have a card that lacks a sticker, right? Like the sticker's not there anymore. So you can't use that card anymore, but the card has a number on it. And you can go to this here and do CharterStone. CharterStone, it gives you 5 victory points, and it allows you to pull more cards from the box. So just for example, if it told me to do card 14, or box 14, crate 14 is what they call it, then it would say read card 29. So that's probably a storyline card that's gonna tell you more about why you're here, why the king is doing stuff. Maybe the king gets angry or happy, stuff like that. And then it says that the player who opened up crate 14, they get cards 40, 41, 42, and they also gain cards 232. So this box starts full, and over time, it gets empty because you've pulled stuff out. because you only have 6 spots in your charter, you will eventually have to build on top of your buildings. There's some other things going on, but I don't want to go into that because it's way too spoilery. But that's the important concept. You can only have 6 buildings, but you're going to build many more than 6 buildings. So you have to be smart about what you build and where you build it so that you keep getting the new advanced technologies and you get other cool stuff too, other than just buildings. You unlock all kinds of different cards. It starts with just buildings, but eventually this is like a steampunk world with all the stuff you would imagine in a steampunk world, which is pretty cool. That's what's appealing, right? I mean, the artwork implies something that kind of looks steampunky. It's totally here. This is a fantasy game. This is not a European farmer thing. No, this is full on steampunk. Okay. So each turn you either place a worker onto the board to activate that building's action, or you take all your workers off the board. And that's it, which makes the turns fairly quick. Each turn it's just boom, next turn, boom, next turn, boom, and that's it. So you're gonna be moving around the board really quick, and that makes this game really fun. There's not a lot of time to be bored. You're not gonna be playing on your phone too much. You don't have time. It's gonna come back to you real quick. Now, some actions, usually ones that require you to spend your influence tokens, often trigger the progress track. Specifically, if you build something, if you open a crate or you score an objective, it is going to move the progress track forward. When the progress track is moved all the way to the red hourglass symbol, the game will then end on the last player's turn in that round. So you got to imagine if I'm here, Leiden's here, Steve's here. If I trigger the end of the game by hitting the progress track here, then Leiden will get to go and then Steve will get to go. If Leiden triggers the end of the game, then Steve would get to go, and then that's it. So that's a complete round. So you have to know who started the game. Influence is often used for victory points in general. So this quota track allows you to spend a thing. Like in this case, you can either give the king a resource or 2 resources and get a victory point. The second person to give 2 resources doesn't get a victory point, but the act of giving quota back to the king gives you 3 victory points. So really it's either 3 victory points, 4 victory points, 3 victory points, again 4 victory points, 3 victory points plus you get a reputation, and then 3 victory points. So that's kind of how this works. So it's either resources, coins, or the kind of cards that you unlock, buildings, technologies, stuff like that. Those are called advancement cards. You can also give those back. In our games, that's pretty rare. Usually we keep the advancements, but sometimes it makes sense. Okay. Again, as a reminder, this is a legacy game, so you're naming your charter, permanent marker on the board, you're naming your person, permanent marker on the card, you're peeling stickers off. Those stickers don't come off the board, they're there. The cards don't fare that well when you pull the stickers off them, so yeah, it's a legacy game. I enjoy it. There is a satisfaction inside of me, not ruining the game, but effectively like practically ripping a card. I mean, you keep track of them for historical reasons, but yeah, it's pretty interesting that nobody else can take this game. This game it's spent on our group. You can buy a refresh pack and turn the board over. And of course, as I said, that's how I'm even showing you this. Otherwise, I couldn't show you the game without any spoilers because the other side is just covered. There is stickers everywhere all over the other thing. And that's kind of fun too, because it kind of feels like being in school or something. All right, there's more boxes. Each player has one of these boxes. There's an archive box where spent cards go. There's all of these resources. There's more resources that you unlock. We don't know all of them yet because we haven't finished the whole 12 campaign, but we know there's more because you can hear them shaking around in there. There's a whole thing I can't even open and show you because that's way too spoilery. Anyway, let's get into the tips. Tip number 1. My first tip, now that you know a bit about how the game works, is to avoid winning the first couple games. Yeah, you heard me right. I highly recommend you avoid winning the first couple games. There is a catch-up mechanic which gives an advantage to the ones who don't win. Not only though should you not win, but if everyone chooses not to try to actively win, you may find that your group has built up its village more early on than you would have if you had somebody who was aggressively trying to win their first game with the most victory points. Just trust me. The people who aggressively won the first couple games still score well. It's kind of a Euro-ish game, so everybody kind of scores well. But I think now that we're in game 6, the people who lost several times in a row are doing very well for themselves because not only did the catch-up mechanic help them, but they spent a little bit more time building up the combos that now makes them really scary. Tip number 2, build and this is kind of related, build as much as you can build the first 2 games. Later buildings in this game dramatically change. Later meaning you open crate 14 and that tells you to get a card and that card has crate 27. And then you open that card and that says that you have, I don't know, crate 35 or something like that. Those later crates are, in my opinion, the real game. You're playing beginner rules, empty board. There's not a lot of things you can do. It's basically your first turn, you can really, you can't do this, can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. All you can do your first turn, very first turn, is, first turn of your first game, all you can do is grow some wheat, make some bricks, mine some coal. That's it. That's all you can really do. And then you end up going to the treasury, you trade in some of that thing. Basically it says you trade a resource for a gold coin. And then you actually start playing the game because you can go to the market with a gold coin and a resource like coal or bricks, and you can buy an advancement. And then you can go back to mining resources, and then you can go to the Zeppelin to build a building, and then you can go to the CharterStone. Well, you start with a building that just gives you like a brick, and then you build some more things, and that like lets you do stuff with the bricks. Then you do something else, and now the thing that the bricks give you, that can be maybe spent on getting something even better. So the faster you can get those buildings out onto the board, the more interesting the gameplay gets. And I'm not saying just skip or rush to game 6. No, you need to learn the rules slowly over time, and you want that catch-up mechanic, you want all that. All I'm saying is that learn the rules, but build up and enjoy the game. Enjoy the game. Don't rush the game. You could, in theory, rush the game and end the game in maybe 15 turns, 16 turns, something like that. Don't rush the game. just have your whole group explore the cards, explore what they can do, and build. Just build and do as much as you can. That's my tip number 2. Tip number 3. My fingers fight me sometimes. They're like, tip number 3. Don't ignore the quota track. Like all games, well, all strategy games, you want to constantly think about action efficiency. That's the amount of gain you get per action. So in this case, in CharterStone, you can measure victory points you gain per resource spent. For example, the quota track says you get 3 victory points for each 1 resource, right? 3 victory points, I put my worker here, and I spend an influence, and I have to spend, this is the cheapest, 1 resource. That gives me 3 victory points. In the beginning of the game, it takes 1 action to gain 1 resource, so that means you get 3 victory points for 2 actions, first game, first turn, which equates to 1.5 victory points per action. So, you want to make sure every action gives you at least 1.5 victory points. This is to win the game, and I said don't even try to win the game the first 2 games, right? I said that. But later on, when you're trying to win, do not ignore the quota. I wouldn't ignore the quota in general. There are reasons that you want as many victory points as possible. But that doesn't mean you need to win. Encourage your buddies to outscore you just by a couple points, not too many. You'll be a little unhappy if you score 20 points less than them, but you won't if you have all the cool buildings. Trust me on that one. All right. So in this game, the calculation becomes slightly different as new buildings unlock different options to gain and spend resources. So at minimum though, ignoring other new rules and new buildings, every action should give you at least 1.5 victory points. Now keep in mind, you can do a series of actions that give you 5 victory points, right? So it's about the culmination of your actions and how many resource victory points that culmination of actions gave you. The more actions that a sequence takes to give you your reward, the riskier it is that the game will end before you hit the payload, right? So if you have to do 4 actions and you would get 7 victory points, then you might do 3 and then the game ends and you don't get any victory points. So that's like the worst case scenario. Tip number 4. Who has what building matters. In the beginning of the game, you and your assistants can go anywhere to get what they want from a building that's there. Later in the game, you will have advantages at using the buildings in your own charter versus the buildings in someone else's charter. Or you'll have an advantage if somebody else has to use your building instead of their building. Okay, I can't say much more than that without causing the spoiler gods to come crashing down on me. However, the important bits here is that if you can get a building for someone else's charter and place it into your charter, you may be able to pull off a combo more readily than someone else. To elaborate, just a tiny bit. Each charter begins the game with the ability to produce one particular type of resource, like I said, say wood or brick. Later in the game, you unlock buildings that require brick to do things that make sense for brick to do, or buildings that require wood to do, right? And I mentioned that, right? You spend brick to do things, and then you spend those things to do other things. It's just sort of like how this economic engine works. If you can get a hold of a building that, say, requires wood, but you are specialized in grain, wood does different things in this game than grain does. So you may be able to do your thing really well and their thing kind of well, and it may force them to come over to your charter and use your building. So when advancements for players go into the general pool, say a wood building gets into the general pool so anybody can buy it, you may want to buy it before they buy it, even though your specialty is grain. It can be really advantageous. It doesn't super optimize. So if your deal is, I'm the master of bricks, and my personas have advantages with bricks, obviously you're not as likely to get an advantage with wood. However, if you CharterStone their crate, you will suddenly have advantages with their thing, because now you've unlocked technologies effectively. It's magic steampunky stuff, but it's kind of technologies to do whatever. So yeah, build their buildings, build all the buildings. Tip number 5, your charter box has a few different tracks that you permanently mark as you play each game. One side is capacity, which is, I'll get into it. The other side is generally what you start the game with, right? So you don't, by default, other than the first game, you are not guaranteed to start with anything except what you retained from the previous game. And what you are allowed to keep from the previous game is based off your capacity. This is not required, and it does not take effect the first couple games, so don't worry about it. But you're building up towards it. You're building up towards it, and you're gonna find out about it real quick. So the other side, and this can mess with people's heads, and they can spend their points wrong, because you basically spend like experience points. They call it glory points. It's basically experience points to advance your charter differently than other people. And this is what you start the game with. So if you saved 2 gold from the previous game and your capacity was 2, then you keep the 2 into the next game. On the other hand, if you spend all of your gold, you had no gold, so your capacity of 2 is left unused, right? On the other hand, you filled out the glory points for gold. Now, every game you add 1 gold on top of whatever you were allowed to keep from the previous game. So, as a general rule, number 1, glory is superior to capacity. Number 2, glory is not capacity. Glory is better than capacity. I can't repeat that enough, because everybody I talked to, their initial gut reaction was that glory increased their capacity. So if they filled out gold, that means they can hold on to more gold from the previous game. That's not true. Glory is better. You either have it or you don't have it, but either way you add to your next game. So, glory is not capacity, glory is better. You want as much glory as you can. And also, once you start thinking about how glory gives it to you, regardless if you have it or don't have it in the next game, that means you have control over your first turn. If you have the glory to give you gold and resources and reputation, then you can activate these buildings before anybody else can, unless they also have done the same thing, right? It's very powerful. Glory is amazing. I'm pretty sure that the best strategic items are at the bottom and go in progressively worse as you go up. So you can see that to get an extra advancement, civilization advancement thing, it costs 2 more glory than to start the game with an extra gold. Just so you can see that not only have they ordered it so that the best is on the bottom, but also the best cost more than the not quite as good. Now, in my opinion, the advancements track is actually the best. I think it's even better than the persona. The persona is like, I mean, you'll know in the first game, and that's kind of the rules on whether I'm telling you about it or not. Personas are like an outfit that you wear, like kind of like Final Fantasy-ish. You wear the outfit, and as long as you have the outfit on, you are better at something. You're better at making bricks. You're better at spending bricks. You're better at building things out of bricks. Or you're better at getting grain or spending grain or building things out of grain. You know, it's just a specialization. You want as many of these on at the same time as possible so that you can be specialized in, say, both building brick and spending brick. That's awesome, you want it. But the civilizations, you get to see the civilization advancements out there, and you get to take one before anybody else can even go to the market and buy it. So that's my tip number 5. Glory is amazing. It's not the same as capacity. It's kind of not a tip so much as it is, hey, don't make this mistake in your group. Which is kind of a tip, right? I think it's a tip. All right, guys. So I really, really want to do a bunch of videos on CharterStone, and I don't know if my heart can handle the amount of rage and anger from doing spoilers about this game. And as much as I don't really believe in spoilers, right? I'm the guy who reads the last chapter of the book so that I know if the book is worth my time. And I read the Wikipedia article about a movie before I watch the movie so that I know if the movie's worth my time and my money. I mean, I go to the luxury theater, it's pricey. With nachos and a drink, that's like $40. So I don't care about spoilers, but I respect people who do care about spoilers. And I worry that if I made too spoiler-ish of a CharterStone video, then somebody would end up somehow missing that it had spoilers, and then getting disappointed. And I don't want to disappoint people. But if you have any ideas of what I could do on CharterStone, say like if I can't do a CharterStone gameplay video, guys, I just can't do it. I mean, I can. Like, we could show the last game. If you were just like, I want to see, I have no intention of playing 12 games. I have no intention of buying a legacy game. My heart can't handle ruining the game. I'm never going to do it. I don't even want to play somebody else's. That could be you, and I respect it. But in that case, maybe you want to live vicariously through what does the full game look like? How crazy does it become? Maybe you'll change your mind and you'll want to play through it. I don't know. That's why I need your ideas. I could never do a video on CharterStone ever again, as much as I love this game. It may be that this game is not suitable for videos because I don't want to ruin anybody's experience. But let me know, post down below. Tell me what you want to see next. I'm going to do a video walkthrough of all of my games, and maybe people will be like, hey, do videos about, I don't know, Sentinels of the Multiverse or something like that. They're just piled up everywhere, guys. So soon I will have that like video, and I'll do a walkthrough of all the games, and maybe somebody will see something that they're like, hey, I want to see more about that. Or maybe we should just play it, because honestly, I haven't even played half the games that I have, because games like CharterStone take playing 12 times. There's only so many weeks in the year. All right, guys. I love this game. Been a lot of fun. I hope to talk to you guys in the comments about this game. Be respectful. If you're going to do spoilers, post all the periods, spoiler, 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 whatever. Don't ruin people's day, and have an awesome game night. Bye, guys.